dear viewer, and welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of a 2-part video, and if you haven't already, I highly recommend you go back and watch part 1 so you're all caught up. With that said, let's get right into it. Where am I? The last thing I remember, I was grabbed by some big guy. This doesn't look like the asylum. Alright, I'm gonna have a look around. Oh god! What the hell is this place? I gotta get the hell out of this place. Alright, I think I'm safe for now. I just gotta catch my breath. Alright, look, I got some crazy footage. Let's take a look. Outlast 2 is fucking insane, and to be honest, I'm not sure if that's in a good way or a bad way. This was my first time actually playing Outlast 2 outside of the demo. Here's some Kel lore. The demo was actually the first video I ever made. I only remember 2 things in relation to the game. 1, I was cringy as hell when I was a teenager.
Risks and dig deep to uncover the stories no one else will dare to touch. You're following a trail of clues that started with the seeming.
And 2, the demo terrified me enough that I didn't have the balls to play the full game by myself. But now we're here, and I forced myself to sit down and finally go through it so I could fully cover both of the mainline games on my channel. Speaking of, since I was able to struggle through these games for those of you watching, I'd love it if you could please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you like my content. It really helps me out and keeps me motivated. Anyways, let's get right into Outlast 2. I'm getting some mad deja vu. I feel like I'm 17 again. Not in a good way, not youthful. More of a cringy kind of way. Outlast 2 centers around Blake Langerman, God that's hard to say, and his wife Lynn. Lynn is an investigative journalist and Blake her cameraman. They're in the middle of investigating a story about a girl that was found dead in the desert of Arizona. The game opens on them filming the opening for their documentation during a helicopter ride into the area the victim was found at. Everything's normal until suddenly the helicopter begins to lose control and spirals into a crash in the ravine below. We have a short hallucination sequence in a school. This is important for later, but just know there's going to be a lot of these throughout the game. Honestly, maybe too much, so we'll talk about those towards the end. After regaining our senses, we awake to find that Lynn is missing. We make our way down the hill and find that the pilot has been, well, I'm sure he's fine. We venture forward in search of our wife and find ourselves in a small village nearby. We're immediately tipped off that something's wrong. You see, the villagers are all here, but I guess they spend their time just stalking us from the woods and muttering to themselves. I'll be honest, I remember this part from the demo, and back then I was freaked out enough that I hid in a barrel for longer than I should have for an entertaining Let's Play. Another thing that's immediately apparent is that there's some weird religious stuff going on here. More than just weird, fanatical even. As we rush through the village, we meet the Chris of this game, and her name is Marta. She specializes in being a scary cunt, and I hate her. Throughout the game, she's definitely got my blood pumping from how tense some of our chase sequences can be, and I truly dreaded whenever she would be nearby. We cautiously avoid Marta, sneaking into a nearby barn to cut through unseen, after falling through the floorboards and getting jump scared. Jesus! Oh my god. We find Lynn as she's escaping from a man named Papa Noth, who is basically the leader of this community known as Temple Gate, and essentially the voice of God for the people here. Our escape doesn't go smoothly, however, as we're ambushed by a second faction, the Heretics. These guys want Lynn also. Why, you may ask? Well, apparently Lynn is pregnant and the baby she's carrying is the Antichrist. The Zealots, we'll call them, at Temple Gate want to, Alt F4 the baby, and the Heretics would see the child born to spite God. Yeah, So, after we get a little bath, the heretics take Lynn and leave us behind. Alright, new objective is same as the old one. Find Lynn. We venture through the outskirts of the town, staying as undetected as we can, and as we enter into a house, we're hit with a blinding light through a back window. As the light fades, we find ourselves back in the school in another flashback sequence. We get some cryptic information about Blake's backstory, and we'll touch more on this later. As we come back to reality, we meet the only friendly person we'll come in contact with the whole game. This is Ethan, and he's the father of the girl that was found dead. The one that prompted us to come to this hellhole in the first place. So, really, if we go back far enough, us being here is all his fault. In all seriousness, Ethan's great, and I can't wait to have him as an ally for the rest of the game.
Take your penance.
Bitch! While Ethan naps, we take our leave and continue on our journey, crawling through cornfields, avoiding crazed hillbilly fanatics, and juking that spooky-ass friend killer Marta. Eventually, we find ourselves in the heart of the town, and a pretty intense chase sequence takes place, with us being forced to run throughout the village, in and out of houses, frantically clawing through crawl spaces, and breaking into sex dungeons. Wait, what was that last one? We do get another school flashback sequence here, and I gotta say, while the transitions into the flashbacks are actually done pretty well, sometimes taking me a second to realize I was no longer in the village, overall I feel like these flashbacks kinda take you out of the game a bit. I'll be honest, 95% of these sequences had no tension for me, and I almost felt safe during these segments. There is some danger, but it definitely didn't have the same fear level going for it that Temple Gate has. After this, we finish our chase in the village and then find ourselves inside the church where Papa Noth is torturing a couple that know where the heretics took Lynn. After divulging that Lynn was taken to the mines, they definitely survived their very kind interview. Once the coast is clear, we attempt to beat Noth there, making our way through yet another cornfield, navigating another couple chases, and jumping our way into Marta's property. This was actually pretty intense. I felt like the kids in the sandlot trying to get their ball back without being seen by the dog. Marta is huge and moves decently quick. Pair that with objectives that take time to interact with, and it gets you on edge pretty quick. We narrowly escape Marta and start towards the woods to get to the mine. It's never that easy, however, and we find that the bridge has been broken and is barely being held together by a couple logs that we need to navigate. So, throughout the game, Noth has been preaching that the end times are coming due to the impending birth of the apparent Antichrist. Well, I guess he might actually be onto something, because while we're crossing the broken beams, we get absolutely swarmed by locusts. We fall to the bottom of yet another ravine and wake up upside down hanging from a tree. This is where we meet the funniest enemy in the game, Laird, and his mount, Nick. I swear that the game even calls him his mount, and I found that very funny. Anyways, while chasing us through the forest, we eventually learn that Laird and Nick believe us to be the Messiah and have us crucified and then buried so we can return to life. Just so we're clear, I am aware of how insane this sounds. Anyways, we do get ourselves out of our graves, so maybe they're onto something. After we exhume ourselves, we get chased by a group of heretics crawling through the grass, and then continue our trek to the mines, only to immediately hit another roadblock. The lift that we need to go down is broken, and we need a rope to get down. Fortunately, there's a dude hanging out.
Me? Just hanging around.
So we borrow his necklace and use it to climb down the lift. Laird and Nick try to stop us, but they're a bit clumsy and decide to take a nap at the bottom of the pit. Our next obstacle is the nearby lake that we cross in a flimsy raft. As we cross, the light from earlier lights up the sky, killing all the fish in the lake. Good thing this probably only has adverse effects on animals, right guys? Right? We get another flashback here. I've left out a couple, by the way. And this, in my opinion, is the best one, as it's got this Curse of the Dead Man's Float vibe about it from Are You Afraid of the Dark? Anyways, we finally get to the mine, but we need to find a way inside, and alright. To be honest, basically the rest of this game is one giant chase sequence broken up and somewhat disjointed by flashback sequences. Once again, I will talk about the flashback sequences shortly, but you're not missing out on anything right now. So, we get chased all throughout the buildings here in our efforts to get into the actual mine. and it's fairly well done. It does keep the blood pumping, and I will say Outlast 2 is a fair bit longer than the first game, and by this point in the original, I was quite bored of the tension and scares. This is not the case here. Outlast 2 does a much better job at keeping the tension going and the adrenaline pumping. We eventually find an elevator and take it down the mine shaft. After suffering a fall 800 feet down, we find ourselves in the heart of the heretics' headquarters. A couple chase sequences later, and we find ourselves drugged and wandering through a mud person orgy for some reason. Look, I guess the Antichrist is getting people real hot and bothered. We find Lynn strung up above the group, and she's apparently speedrun all 3 trimesters in the last few hours. We have yet another flashback and awake to find that the people of Temple Gate have come and killed the heretics. On top of that, the apocalypse appears to be transpiring. So we find Lynn amongst the chaos and attempt to find shelter nearby, fighting our way through the storm. During our search, Marta shows up for one last chase, and it doesn't end well for her.
He ain't gonna be Outlast 3.
We take Lynn to the nearby church in a hurry, and in a very graphic scene, we help deliver the harbinger of the end times. Lynn dies, there's another flashback, and when we awake, Papa Noth is sitting next to us. He tells us the baby is too strong for him to harm and unalives himself. With all of our tormentors dispatched, we take our leave with our child, surely to live a happy, normal life. Well, we would, but apparently the world ends. So, okay. Whew. Like I said, Outlast 2 is crazy as shit. Let's go over everything real quick, starting with the flashbacks. The whole point is that Blake is haunted by the death of his friend Jessica from when he was a kid attending a Catholic school. In a surprise twist, she was assaulted by a priest and was accidentally killed while trying to escape him. The actual resolution and revelation of the flashback story is left sort of up to interpretation. Obviously, we know she died and that it was made to look like an unaliving. God, I hate that I have to say it like that. It's so dumb. But we don't fully know what Blake's role in the death is other than he likely knew the truth. Whether he helped in covering it up or not, I'm not sure. If there is confirmation of it, leave a comment. My problem with the whole flashback story is that, to be honest, it could be entirely removed from the game and would not affect the main plot in the slightest. On top of that, the flashbacks mainly caused breaks in the tension and really served to take me out of the game each time it happened. During the mine chase sequence that lasts 15 to 20 minutes, we get a flashback every couple of minutes. By the 3rd or 4th time, I was getting very frustrated. Honestly, I didn't really care about the flashback story. That's just my own opinion on it, though. I know I've read a lot of people's opinions on this, and there's a fair number of people that really liked the backstory for Blake. Anyways, that's the core story of Outlast 2, but there is a little more. You see, if you look through all the documents and make sure to be observant in the surrounding areas, you'll learn that this is actually all one big Murkoff experiment. The corporation is using Temple Gate to test mind control experiments with radio waves, and the rural isolated village is the ideal location. This experiment is the source of the white light and the cause of the flashbacks we have throughout the game. Fun fact I learned while doing extra research for this, apparently, this facility in the distance is the same facility that Outlast Trials takes place in. I thought that was a nice extra bit of lore to have. Finally, while this is definitely a subjective feeling, I think that Outlast 2 is a much scarier game than the first one. Annoying in some cases, yes, but up to the end, I felt tension and fear the whole way through. As fond as I am of the original Outlast, I can't say the same for it. That being said, overall, both of these games are a fun romp for a couple evenings, and if you're into the found footage style like I am, they are possibly the best in this genre. Alright, we did it. We covered both Outlast games. Personally, I think I enjoyed the atmosphere and tension of the second, but I much prefer the story of the first. To be honest, it felt a bit like the story was an afterthought for Outlast 2. Let me know in the comments which game you prefer, as well as any games you'd like to see me cover on my channel. Thank you for your support. You are the main motivation for making content, and I appreciate everyone who even clicked on this video. You're awesome. See you in the next one, and thanks for watching. Oh, hey, the sun's coming up. You know, I haven't actually heard any of those crazed villagers for a while. I think I may have actually made it. Wait, what is that? no, no, no!